Om Haranmaye Pare Koshi Virajan Brahmanishkalam Tachu Brahm Jyotisham Jyoti Tad Yadatma Vido Vidu. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Shining like burnished gold, highest and deepest, the core intelligence of living beings, partless and indivisible, free of all taint, the essence of everything which all beings seek, either knowingly or unknowingly, there shines Brahman. It is that which the Guru teaches. It is that which the wise ones exult in. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Vedanta Siddhanta Nirukti Resha Brahmaiva Jivaham Sakalam Jagadcha Akanda Rupa Stiti Reva Moksho Brahmadvitiye Shrutayaha Pramanam. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. It is the apt and final conclusion of the Vedanta that all is Brahman. Time, space, living beings, and the world. Living in constant recognition of this fact is what is called enlightenment. Brahman is pure and perfect, and one without a second. And the revealed scriptures are the sure and certain proof of this fact. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavo Vahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvisho Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Which is precisely how the second chapter begins. Now, us both, Saha, together, Avatu, may that one protect. Now, us both, Saha, together, Bhunaktu, may that one nourish. Saha, conjointly, Virajam, with energy, Karavavahoi, may we work. Now, the two of us. Aditam, study, Tejasvi, vigorous and effective, Astu, let be. Vidvishavahai, may we not dispute with each other. Oh, that's why we start out with Om Sahana Vavatu. However you translate it into English, there's been different ones that all work, but basically it's about those two and that one. That is, those two getting together and discussing that one, the oneness of all things, those two meaning guru and disciple, and then not disputing about it, which is one of the monikers for the West, is that our philosophy is all about argumentation and dispute and winning and victory and winning a prize and getting famous and all that. But that's not the way spiritual life proceeds. Spiritual life is to understand, comprehend, and then the two of us together can do that. So, as Vivekananda said, you'll never get illumination or enlightenment from the world or from books or from temples. You only get it from another soul. And that makes sense when we look at all the great souls that have come, called world teachers, like the one we worship here, whose birthday we celebrated last night. by singing Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan Karuna Maya Jaya Kripa Nidan. Full of grace, full of compassion, the Lord Ramakrishna who has come in this age. Great souls like that who have in a very short time gathered together, in his case some 5 million devotees, which sit with us all today. Not only do they sit with us today, whether present live streaming or present live, there are also all the rishis and seers of the past sitting with us right now, because in Indian terms of thinking, that is Vedanta thinking, is that time is not linear. It's like more like a layer cake. All the ages are stacked. Kali, Dvapara, Treta, Satya Yugas, that's the age of light, and Treta Yuga and Dvapara Yuga, where people get further and further away from that light, and Kali, where they're completely bereft of that life, that light. And so, as I was saying yesterday, when it gets so dark, spiritually speaking, could be very light, technically speaking, or scientifically speaking, or intellectually speaking, but it's very dark spiritually. So when it comes like that, then we turn to great souls like Sri Ramakrishna, because they will come. As we chanted last night, as we offered him a beautiful lei made of Portland roses, see here in Portland, Oregon, and chanted to him, Sarva Dharma Astapakastvam, Sarva Dharma Swarupakaha, Acharyanam Mahacharyo, Ramakrishna Yate Namaha. So Sarva Dharma is the essence of all dharmas. Dharma means all the paths that you go to reality. You get to reality by treading these paths, you see. Sarva Dharma Astapakastvam, Sarva Dharma Swarupakaha is also the essence of all dharmas. Doesn't just come and show them and teach them and exemplify them, but he's actually the essence of them, which goes hand in hand with what we were talking about yesterday, that all dharmas are eternal, right? India considers their scriptures and the words in them, and the thoughts and the high-minded thoughts as eternal first, and then comes through the mind of Ishvara, and then comes down to the mind of sages and seers, and finally comes down to scripture. They finally had to write it down. So those people who needed that concession could sit in front of it in any given age, in the illusion of linear time, later, see, and like we're doing here, take apart words and contemplate their meanings and get inspired by it, and then go on with our life. Vivekananda said, Shravana first, you hear it, then Manana, you roll it around your mind, Nididhyasana, you realize it. But there's a fourth one, Satchakara, that means you take it into your life. That's what Vivekananda really was emphasizing, is that we take it out of books and out of temples and make the Vedanta a living verity, which it is, eternally living. So you're back to that, see. So yesterday we went through many chapters and lessons of the chapter 2 of the Taittiriya Upanishad, and we've only taken a few lessons. Let me read them to you to catch us up. May Brahman protect us together. May he nourish us together. May it work conjointly with great energy. May that our study be vigorous and effective. May we not dispute or hate anyone. Let there be peace, peace, peace. That one who realizes Brahman attains the supreme. With reference to that very fact, it has been declared, Brahman is existence, intelligence, infinitude. The one who realizes Brahman, treasured in the cave of the heart, in the highest ether, fulfills all wants together, since Brahman is omniscient. And for that sloka yesterday, we took this whole chart with all the epithets of Brahman and went through them with running commentary. So there you had that, still in lesson 1 of chapter 2, and there's another sloka, comes next. From that very Atman, which has been referred to as Brahman, ether came to be. From ether, air. From air, fire. From fire, water. From water, the earth. And from earth, the herbs. From herbs came food. From food, the person came into existence. That indeed is this man, consisting of the essence of food. I hope you understand they're talking about your body here. In fact, when I was saying, say, the yogi doesn't hardly ever get sick, but when people get sick and they're ignorant, they say, "I'm sick." See, and when people get sick and they're devotees or aspirants, they say, "My body's sick." But when a sage would get sick, he'd say, "The body is sick." He doesn't have any attachment at all to his body. He doesn't call it his. It's an unclean thing, you see. You might have noticed last trip to the bathroom, or when you went to the hospital and had stuff taken out of it. You might have noticed how unclean it is. So it's also the temple of God at the same time. So how that fits together is a matter of your discrimination. Viveka, we talked about it yesterday. This indeed is his head, this is his right wing, this is his left wing, this is his trunk, and this is the hind part, forming the support and foundation of everything. There is, besides this stanza of 14 lines, others explaining it. Then we got into lesson 2, and we read yesterday, "Whatsoever creatures are contained by the earth, truly all of them were born from food. Likewise, by food, and food alone, they remain alive. Moreover, they return into it in the end. Surely food is the first and preeminent among all that is created." Remember the word "acreate" here from yesterday. Your soul's not created. Still talking about the body, so don't get confused. Surely food is the first and preeminent among all that is created. Hence it is regarded as the medicament of all. I still haven't looked that word up, but interesting word. Those who contemplate food as Brahman really obtain food. For food is the first among beings, hence it is called a panacea. Living beings are born from food. Having been born, they are reared by food. Food is called annam, because creatures both consume it and are consumed by it. And in that regard, we went on and started looking at the 5 sheaths, because the Upanishad is now going to discuss the 5 sheaths. If you wonder where the 5 sheaths came from, 21 years ago when I first mentioned it to all of you, the Dara system, then you can say, well, it's listed now in the Taittiriya Upanishad, chapter 2, lesson 1. And you'll know where to go for it when you want to read about it. There's also another Upanishad that contains the Adara system. Om. We did take the next sloka, and I'm going to go back to, as we're pointing to this chart, I'm going to go back. That third sloka of chapter 2, third lesson, we should say here. Verily, other than that which consists of the essence of food and contained by it, is this self consisting of vital energy, by which this Annamaya self is filled. So you see, now there's your second aspect of the non-self. I say self here means, of course, these non-selves, these aspects of the 5 sheaths. So one is filled by the next, and then the next is filled with the other 2, and the next is filled with the other 3, and the next closer in is filled with all 4. So they become dependent upon each other. Interdependent arising, it's sometimes called by the Buddhists. And then finally you get this Atman inside. Sri Ramakrishna used to discuss that as the green coconut. You see, when people walk around saying, oh, all is one, but they don't know a thing of what they're saying because they haven't separated the non-self from the self yet. So he says, he takes the green coconut and he says, it's all one, isn't it? It's one solid mass. Green coconut means unripe. Now when it ripens over time, it falls off the tree and ripens, and you find there's like 5 layers there and something rattling around inside. If you walk along the beach with me in Hawaii, if you come visit me, and we'll go take a walk on the beach and talk about Brahman, what else? There's nothing left to talk about but that, you see. Then we'll pick up an old coconut lying under a palm tree on the beach there, and we'll shake it, and sure enough you'll hear something rattling in it. So when it's not green anymore, when it's ripe, it turns into 5 layers with something independent, not interdependent, but independent in the middle of it. That's the Atman that's contained by the 5 sheaths, but is not part of them. See, It's the self with capital S. Everything else is the non-self. It's the Atman. Everything else is the unatman. See? So, beautiful analogy by the great master here on his birthday. We remember it. So the 5 sheaths would be body, prana, which is energy, vital energy, not kinetic energy or electric energy. Then mind, intellect, and ego. And that would be like the outer husk, the inner copra kind of material. If you see your dog tear apart a coconut in Hawaii, then you understand this very well. And then there's the outer shell of the inner kernel, you see, and then there's the meat, and finally the milk, you see. You say maybe the milk might be the ego, you see. It's getting all this bliss, and it's also getting all this sorrow. So then the inner kernel is the Atman, rattling around inside there. So many of you have heard that analogy already, but it's nice to apply each of those layers to the actual Adara system, 5 sheaths, so it brings it home even more to you, smacks you, right in your proverbial face, you see, about how I'm not the body, so I should never call it mine. I will call it the body, and I'll treat it as a temple because there is something within, you see. Not inside it in a material sense, but inside it in a subtle sense, then inside it in a causal sense. In other words, it's the furthest out effect of something that's subtle and something that's causal. That's called the 3 worlds. And Sahana Bhava too, you see, may it protect the 3 worlds. Truly, this is also exactly in the form of a person. That one being in the shape of a person, this is also is the form of a person. Prana it is called. Prana indeed is its head, Vyana its right wing, Apana its left wing, Samana its trunk, Udana its support and foundation. There's these further stanzas about it. And the next slokas end with that line. Further there is this following stanza. Further there is this following stanza. So they're referring to the slokas and wise sayings of other rishis and other families, because these Upanishads were written by families. Householders who raised their children, and their children learned these things, meditated on them, then contributed their understanding to that in another way, and this is how they expanded. Mostly wasn't composed by monks or monastics. There were, of course, great householder rishis who renounced the world then and became monk-like. But came from family life, which is why here in SRV we feel our great work as predicated by Lex Hixon, and before him by Swami Vivekananda, who came amongst householders here, is that it's time for us to cut ourselves in the image. The image for us wouldn't be a monk. We're not going to cut ourselves in the image of Swami Vivekananda, at least not yet, because we don't have some scars in our mind for monasticism here. I have friends, 2 or 3 of them, who are monks in the Dominican order, a monk in the Franciscan order. And they've been telling me for the last 5 or 10 years that all the monks are leaving the Christian orders. They're not staying in the monasteries anymore. And I know from my own experience that there are many Westerners who became swamis in the Ramakrishna order and don't hold on to that. They let go. And we have this as our history because Swami Vivekananda, when he came here, worked amongst householders, but he made 2 people, only 2 people in our culture, sannyasins. He gave them the sannyasin vow, 1 man and 1 woman. And they both left the path within a few months or a year. So ask Swami about that later. What's that about? What's that all about? And Swami said, a seed was planted. So he's working on a samskara from monasticism in the Western culture. It's going to take time. So that being said, let's look back then to him working among householders and SRV working among householders. We want to convince you all that the householder position is extremely noble. It can give rise to some of the greatest truths in the world that are eternal truths. We too can pick out of the highest ether these great sayings, these great axioms, and make them broadcast here. And that's why it is a hard road to hoe. We want to Look for those people who are strong, bold, fearless. In other words, if you want to put it in an opposite way, who are not lost in emotionalism and sentimentalism, who are not lost in the maya of raising families in ignorance, but they want to raise their families in knowledge, in higher wisdom. They don't want to make their children bond slaves to suffering and money like they were, and their parents were, and their grandparents were. They want to wake them up and free them, because even Christ said these children are not your own, they're souls under your guidance. So before I get into a whole different topic, but you can see how related it is when you read these slokas, and you can see how they're beginning to relate it to the fact that in Tantra, for instance, one of the very first Mayic evolutes is thinking the body to be the soul, mistaking the body for the soul. That would actually apply here if we even thought there was a soul. See, but the ignorance has gotten so thick that we don't even think there's a soul. It's not like, oh, I've lost track of my soul. See, who says that anymore? It's just, I am the body. Give me my pleasures. Give me my money. Let me dominate over others. And let me run as far away from the teacher as I can possibly get. Swarupanyata bhava. That's the word for it. 7 syllables, you see. There's a lot of good words in Sanskrit that we don't have in English, but you'll have to wade through 7 syllables, you see. Meditate on 7 syllables or 14 words. 14 stanzas, he just said. So Swarupa Pratista would be that person who is steady in knowledge of the self. Swarupanyata bhava would be that person who runs away from anything that has to do with the self, is hiding themselves constantly in Maya, trying to get as far away from the light as possible, see, until such a time when they're happily forgetting all the responsibility they have to themselves and to others for being noble, for being divine, for being steady, because that's what pratista means. So we're here, SRV, for 21 years, or 30 years if you count SRV National, recruiting you. See, we want you, but we want the real you. See, not the warring you, not the dominating you, see, but the servant you. That's why Krishna says in the Gita, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprasyena sevaya upadekshanti te jnana jnaninas tattva darshanaha. Darshan, you get darshan, you see, from the wise. So it means the sincere student will approach the wise preceptor via prostration, via humility, and via service. Then the wise one will initiate them into the highest wisdom. Because they know if they're proud and arrogant, like Americans are, they can't even drive down the street without them shaking their fist at you. See, get out of my way. See, they know that if you have that, then you'll never have a chance at even glimpsing Brahman, what to speak of it being revealed to you or you realizing it. See, so you're going to have to stamp that ego out, and we're headed for the existence, the seeming existence of that ego, this 5th layer inside, where we first took on a form that declared, I am separate from God, and I'm separate from you, and you're separate from me, and man is separate from woman, and everything is separate, you see. Exacerbated to such an extent over time that there is no oneness. It's all a green coconut, you see. It's all immature. You don't know about the 5 layers, the 3 bodies, the 3 worlds, that your dream state and deep sleep are where you commune with ancestors and deities, and it becomes lost to you. Until, as I was just saying, it's such a predicament is that, and how I got into this little roundabout circle here is that if we thought there was a self, it would be something else, but we don't even think there's a self anymore. We just think we're the body, and that's it. And we are born and we die. But that's living in Maya, because there's no birth for you and there's no death for you. If you really examined bodies, you'd find out that not even they die. They remain in seed form in your mind. Why else would you remember your loved ones, you see, if they're not still there in seed form? Somebody came up to me yesterday and said, gee, I was meditating and I caught the whiff of the aroma of my father who passed. See? It smells like, strangely like tobacco that he used to smoke and so forth. Am I off the track here? See? And I said, no, those things are connected. He may not be a conscious, realized soul, and therefore looking over you and protecting you, because he probably didn't get the Dharma in his life yet. But nonetheless, he's thinking about you somewhere, and you're thinking about him, and those waves are bound to pass in this higher ether. You see, they're bound to pass each other and connect and meet. So it's not all not all rocket science, and neither is it all that hard to understand. Nor is it just New Age woo-woo, as the physicists are calling it nowadays. You see, Deepak Chopra's woo-woo. You see, that he starts talking about higher things, and so all of a sudden you laugh at him. You see. But you're really laughing at your own ignorance that you don't know that you have 4 different ethers inside of you. You're so attached to the physical ether, and that's how dumbed down your consciousness has gotten. How heavy your ignorance is how your intelligence has fallen. So then my point, come back to the householders here, because there really are no monks among us to speak of, and start at the basics. This was the first teaching 21 years ago I gave you. Here we are again, V7. It's like the 7th chart I ever put out. And that's the value of repetition in spiritual life. First, maybe you're apt to complain about it a little bit. But then you realize, if I read the Gita 10 years ago and I pick it up and read it today, how vastly different it is. How much I missed, or how much my intelligence has grown since studying, taking the Dharma with my teacher and Sangha and all that. And now when I read those same slokas, they're entirely different to me. They're much deeper, you see. And 10 years later, you'll find the same thing happens again. So you're complaining about repetition. You better start complaining about the repetition of your past lifetimes, or the repetition of your karma, or the repetition of your old samskaras that are keeping you weighed down. Sri Ramakrishna said, drop the hot air balloons, drop the sandbags out of the hot air balloon. It goes up naturally. So you have to look in your mind and see what of the sandbags are there, see which ones you want to dump. Jettison. So, the ships, hot air balloons, flying craft, same thing. You start throwing stuff out when it starts to fall, you see, or sink. So spiritual life, no different. It's about giving up these things. See? Giving up the unreal, keeping what's real. You don't want to throw out the things that are real, otherwise you're throwing out the soul and keeping the body. My point here. See? Throwing out the baby with the bathwater, as they say. So you have to have that honed discrimination, and you're heading for that when you get toward the Vijnana Maya Kosha. This is a kosha that may be not as subtle as the ego, but most of the seers are pointing to it as the doorway, your intelligence. If you can hone that, it can even overcome the ego. The ego will finally give up and say, all right, it's not my knowledge, it's yours. You see. And then you have to find out who you is, you see, to assign yours to it. And the ego will all of a sudden do this amazing shift that it looks behind itself and sees the light of Brahman, like a glowworm looking at the sun, you see, or the moon. You see. The glowworm says, I shine by my own light. You see. I'm the greatest light in the world. And then the moon comes out. See, it takes a hasty retreat. Now, I read those slokas not only because they're the ones we looked at yesterday in terms of the chart where we were looking from bottom up on the importance of food, because kind of going through in fact, let's continue that, because that's more in conjunction with the process that we're under right now. Using those slokas of chapter 2, lesson 1, some 3 or 4 slokas I just read, then you can remember how we said that food is important. It says food is the main entity as far as the create world goes. It's very interesting because you can deny the body and deny food. You go fasting and say the body's no good and foul, but that's not really their point. They just want you to assign it to the create world and know that there's an a-create. You see, that's their point. The Westerner gets shamed and guilt-ridden because of its Judeo-Christian upbringing when it hears teachings about sannyas, renunciation. But the householder should renounce too, you see. That's the name of the seminar I'm giving 2 weekends from now, right here in this very place. You won't be live streamed, sorry folks, you'll have to come to me for this one. We're having these teachings for the householders that show you how to renounce and be free as a householder. You may not, some of you, be householders anymore. That is, you may not have children at all, or your children are raised and gone. Many of the people in Vedanta come when they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and most of that is kind of out of the way. You're very fortunate if you come when you're young in this time, in this culture. It may be before you have children, so you can consider either, I don't have to have children, there are plenty of souls out there. It's just the ego replicating itself, you see. Or maybe I'll have children, but I'll raise them dharmically. So you have these 2 higher choices before you, instead of raise them in ignorance, raise them in suffering, raise them in pleasure, raise them to tread the Bhoga Marga for the umpteenth time, and how many lifetimes. Now maybe you'll have a choice, you see. So it's an interesting point to put forward there, is that when they say, it may sound like the body in the world is an undesirable thing, but basically you just want to put it in the right category. Seek thee first the kingdom of heaven, right? Store up your treasures in heaven, correct? I mean, all the teachers throughout time have been telling you about this process of separating the wheat from the chaff, so that you can get on with the real life, see, and not be burdened down by these problems. I mean, it's almost natural that first-class fools running around out there, as my teacher used to say, grab onto the world with all their might and hold on to it with a death grasp. Even intelligent people, the scientists, holding on to the atomic particle as if it were everything, as if it were some great discovery. They'll be, chattering about that for decades, like hens excited about the latest hatching of bugs on the barnyard floor, you see. Chatter, 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 chatter. But you're talking about Anam's particles that they've known about without the electron microscope for thousands of years. And they put it in their scriptures. See? Not only that, you can't eat a rug or a pillow. See? So where's the real particle? Food. Let's get down to it, you see. Food is important to everyone. The more food you have, the better. That is, the more you can master food. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, some have never heard of milk, some have heard of it but never tasted it, and others have gotten a glass and had the great good fortune to taste it. And then we could say some then own a dairy, you see, and they can give it out to others in pints, in quarts, in gallons, you see. So, coming to know of the self, then, you value it most highly above everything else, which means your spiritual life is going to take first place, and the world is going to slide into second place. Doesn't mean the world is renounced in the monastic way for you. It means it's, I'm getting into my next week's seminar teachings, or 2 weeks from now. But understand what I mean. It's really coming up right here in these slokas about the Annamaya Kosha and the Pranamaya Kosha for householders. So you just want to put these things in the right category. Birds have nests, foxes have holes, but you have no place to lay your head here. So as long as you're here, let's put your mind on the most important thing in the create world, food. And that's what this chart started out saying. And it's what the Kundalini teachers in the 60s when they came here, in my estimation, weren't really very honorable teachers, like Swamiji when he came in 1893. They didn't teach about the sanctity of food. They had you doing strange fasts and asanas and breathing exercises. There's one great young lad in India who went to his father and said, "What if I fast for 15 or 30 days?" And his father said, "Fast for a few days if you want. Observe fast on Ekadashi or whatever you do in your tradition. But realize that the man who goes without food too long becomes a non-entity." What are you going to prove? In fact, isn't that kind of the point? The ego is trying to prove that it can go without food for a long time. So you can go boast to your friends next week. "I fasted for a week." Well, I ate well, but I got realization. You see. I moderated my food, and I ate purely, and then I subjected it to mantra, and then when I subjected it to mantra, then I subjected the mantra and food to my sadhana, and I began practicing, and I got ojas. What did you get in a week? What a thin body, you see. Maybe emaciated. You see. So, again, the honorable teachers come, and they're not telling you to renounce prematurely or immaturely, or even ultimately, I think. I think when Swami Vivekananda would say that it's really in the end all about accretion. It's about adding on. It's not about taking away. Taking away is shunyata in Buddhism. Taking away is neti neti in Vedanta. Not this, not this. But you do that to get the real thing, the one reality. And when you get the one reality, then it's a matter of add-on, isn't it? Because those things that you renounced before, like poison, you see, even food that was taken with a brooding mind, when you see Brahman, you don't brood anymore. And the food you take is nectar, you see. So, again, the shame and grief of a Western, person who's been under the thumb of fundamentalist religion too long comes forward when you hear the teachings of renunciation. But that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about discrimination and what's best for you, what's good for you. Highest good. Loka sangraha, as we said yesterday. So, with that said, and I've just sort of taken you through a quick review of that in a short time, we looked at the transmigration and cycles problem. Buddha got us beyond that in 550 BC, and then Christ came and made fishers of men out of you 500 years later, and Shankara came 700 years later and showed both householders and monks how to renounce the world. And then Chaitanya came 1400, you see, another 500 or 600 or 700 years later. Then Ramakrishna's on the scene in 1836, or 1838, I think, 1838, and to 1888. Is it? 1836 to 1886, yeah. Those 50 years in the middle of the 18th century, which changed the world. Not all at once, but slowly. Everything since then has increased, hasn't it? Arts, sciences, technology, you see. But are we going to use them in the right way to help this accretion, you see, this amelioration? Or are we going to dominate over others and, you see, cause more karma that we're going to have to pay? Individually and collectively, we'll have to pay it. So this is what you have when you're caught in worldly cycles, you see. You want to get yourself free from those. Freedom is up here. See, the body can go on doing its spinning, you see, like a pot. But make sure the pot's perfected already when it spins, because then it will look like a candle in a windless place, you see. There will be no motion. You'll be the inactive agent, right? One of those epithets of Brahman that you are. You want to look like everything is effortless. Like when I was a young cellist, a prodigy right here in Portland, winning all the scholarships to music schools with the Portland Junior Symphony, it was called back then. I used to admire watching video or film, it wasn't video back then, watching some films of Pablo Casals play the cello. And those things that us young cellists couldn't master in some really difficult concerto, you see. He made it look easy. You see, almost made you give up. It's supposed to inspire you. See. Number one, you know, it makes it easy to him. He must be a natural. Number two, it's hard, and he's already done it. Number three, so why should I have to do it? Which is part of why I retired from symphony after a while, is that there is a kind of repetition that you don't care to participate in anymore. It's a repetition of worldliness, cycles, you see. And symphony may have been all high and refined and everything, but I saw people coming and drinking alcohol in the lobbies and, you know, dressing up in their finest suits. The same things that the youth of the rishis complained about, like Narada and Sukra and others. They, sons of rishis, they say, you know, society is just frivolous, you see. It's just caught on the surface. I don't like this. That's the way I was at 19. So you want to withdraw from that, you see. And there's only so long that you can keep up a presence there, you see. And so if you keep up a presence in the world, make sure it's the presence of a pot on a potter's wheel that's already perfected. It spins, but you could hardly tell because it's so perfect. That's how you want to live. And that's how my teacher, who was a monk, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, lived. His name was even Asheshananda, with no residue. The bliss of no residue at the end is one way you could interpret that. So he wanted to live as if nothing could touch him at the end. The god of death, the god of desire, and the god of time couldn't find him when he died. That's one song in India, you see. Yama went looking for him, god of death. Where is he? He said, I want to take his soul. He doesn't have a soul anymore. He gave it up. Now he's just got the Atman, you see. And then the god of time went looking for him, you see. Kala, and then the god of karma went looking for him, you see. There must be some residue left that I can trap him back into the body, into cycles with. I can't find any, you see. I knew he was an entity. Where is he? You see. So that kind of transparency, see, very positive transparency to all the things of the world, frees you from cosmic cycles. And you want to make sure that you check those off in this lifetime. Am I free from karma? Am I free from bondage? Am I free from ignorance? And so forth and so on. Now can I be free from gunas, attachments to nature, see? Can I be free from possessions and desires and so forth? And it gets subtler and subtler till you get up here and you have to be free from old karmas. You get free from new karmas pretty quick once you hear this truth. This is an interesting teaching in both Tantra and Yoga. You get free from new karmas pretty quick. You stop developing them, you see. You go for punya rather than papa. Like this song last night we sang, Ramakrishna Bhagavan, you see. Shuddha Buddha Akalusha Nishpapa is one of the lines. Shuddha, purity, Buddha, intelligence, Akalusha Nishpapa, dissolved Nishpapa. Papa is sins and transgressions, not only his own, because he didn't have any. He didn't come here to work on his sins. He was free when he arrived. He's come here to work on yours. See? Girish Ghosh said, if I had known what a huge pit Sri Ramakrishna was for the expiation of sins, I would have committed a lot more of them in my life. Because he got Sri Ramakrishna's grace, and he was right there next to this huge vacuum for transgressions, you know. So he could womanize, he could gamble, he could do all sorts he could eat bad food with a brooding mind. But he had Ramakrishna right next to him, you see. Finally, he had to give up doing those things. They weren't fun anymore. You see, that's the thing about it. You see a person in Ananda, bliss, see, Ananda Gana at the very top of this chart, then it's like, he's got 1,000 shares of bliss and I've got none. See? Like that joke about the opportunist, right? Heard that joke? Opportunist had one chance to meet God, so luckily he met God as a voice inside. See? So this voice, the opportunist said, "Who's that?" "This is God." And the opportunist said, "Oh, I've always wanted to talk to you. Here's my opportunity." So he says, "Is it true that all of the money in the world is just like a penny to you?" God said, "Yes, my son, that's true. All the money in the world, all the treasure is just like a penny to me." So the opportunist is clever. You see, he's beginning to form his tact here. He doesn't want to see God. He just wants to get things from him. So his next question, is it true that all of time is just like 1 second to you? And God says, "Yes, it's true, my son. The whole sweep of time is just like a mere second to me." Then the opportunist took his chance and he said, "Lord, can you give me one of your pennies?" And there was a little silence, and then the voice said, "Give me a second to think about it." So you can't out-clever the most clever, you see. In that way, you're going to have to be using time and wealth in such a way. You know, the wealth is really food, keeps you sustained. The wealth in food is energy. The energy needs to be pure, so you use a mantra. The mantra needs to be realized, so you practice sadhana. And when you practice sadhana, you get the results of ojas and tejas. Tejas means you just give the light back to others once you have it. Before you didn't shine, you see. Now you're shining. And then you give it on to others. And that's a cycle that transcends this cycle, you see. You're going into the wheel of immorality to the wheel of morality. Then you're leaving the wheel of morality and getting onto the wheel of dharma, teachings. Then you're getting off the wheel of dharma with that and getting onto the wheel of sadhana, which means you practice and put those teachings into effect. Hopefully take them out of books and temples, you see. Put them into your everyday life. And then where do you go from the wheel of sadhana? You get free. And you say that is the grandest of all wheels. That's the healing wheel. You see, that's the ultimate turning of the dharma wheel. You see, the Buddha wheel is that you've realized the truth in everything. You know how everything's interconnected. When you know how everything's interconnected, you want out of the whole mess. It's a teaching that's not given very often. It's that when you see the interconnectedness of all things, you don't want to be a part of it. Your soul wants to be free of all cycles, all connections. And everything that causes everything to cycle is nature, either in its manifested form and its unmanifested form. So when you see all of this in its manifested form, tip of the iceberg, is connected to the bulk of the iceberg, the unmanifested, unseen, unheard, unthought potential of everything. And you see how that's cycling all the time. You begin to figure out that this iceberg, tip and bulk, is sitting in an ocean, see, and under the light of a sun, you see. And you want the sun in the ocean, and you want free of form. It's called Kaivalya in yoga. Busy teaching people 1,000 asanas in the West. Materialistic people attached to the body, and you teach them asana. You never once mention Kaivalya, that you want off the wheel of birth and death. You think asana is going to prepare you for higher yoga. You think asana alone is going to do anything? One of the greatest seers of all that ever lived, who was enlightened when he was 10, he was teaching graybeards when he was 16, and he passed from the body when he was 32. I'm talking about Shankaracharya said, you will not get enlightened by hundreds and thousands of asanas or hundreds and thousands of breathing exercises. If you're still attached to the Bhoga Marga, you're just adding fuel to the fire. That is the path of enjoyment. Oh, I enjoy stretching, you see. My life force is flowing, but you're still just a healthy animal. You don't know that the bliss that passes all understanding and the peace that passes all understanding is outside the body, outside the energy that you got from doing pranayama. It's beyond the mind, it's beyond even your intelligence, and it's certainly beyond your little ego, which is clinging with a death grasp to matter. See? And it's the light of the soul that you've always heard about from great souls. See? I am the light of the world. See? You begin feeling like that. I and my Father are one. See? Birds have nests, foxes have holes. Let them have the earth. See? And go on and realize your highest nature. Go to the Garden of Gethsemane and meditate. 2,000 years after my arrival, and you're talking about meditation being the work of a devil? How did that happen? When I had you meditating in Gethsemane on the highest truth. See? And now you've just degraded to prayer? You're asking me for things? Are you an opportunist or what? So get a clue. In our Eastern tradition, Vedanta, and it might as well be a world tradition as far as Swamiji is concerned, 900 years, it'll have an incline. You see, this is going to take over the world, Advaita Vedanta, in an underground river way. People will never see it coming. So this accretion we're talking about, this add-on, this higher cycle, it reaches its apex right there, and it begins where we left off yesterday. And that means right there at that spiritual life proceeds level. You see. Proceeds with what? Maturation of devotion. I've told the story several times that in my life with the Swamis here in the West, that people have come to them eventually, got 10, 20 years of Vedanta under their belt. Now what do I do? See, I understand the teachings, I feel really grounded, I have the Dharma, I'm meditating, I'm waiting for Mother's grace to come, whatever. What do I do in the meantime? And they said, increase your devotion to God. Now that you have this discrimination between the real and the real under your belt, now increase your devotion to God. So that's what they mean here, maturation of devotion. When you have maturation of devotion, you may feel something like this. I don't mean you'll feel like turning pages. You'll feel like this. Chintaya mama manasa hari chidgana niranjana. Chintaya mama manasa hari chidgana niranjana. Kivanupama bhati mohana murati vakata hridaya ranjana. Kivanupama bhati mohana murati vakata hridaya ranjana. Chintaya mama manasa hari chidgana niranjana. Meditate, O mind, he sings, on Hari, that is the Lord. The pure, the ever-perfect, eternal consciousness, absolute. What incomparable radiance. How fascinating is his wondrous form. How dear is he to all his devotees. That's how you'll feel when your devotion matures. And it won't all be just sweet, slow tones. You might start singing Navaragaranjita Kotisha Shirinindita Vijuli Chamake Arupa Loke Pulaki Shihori Jivana Redi Kamala Sana Jatara Karana Redi Kamala Sana Vajatara Charan Deko Shantamone Premanayana Aparupa Priya Darashana Aparupa Priya Darashana. it's even more beauteous in fresh blossoming love that shames the splendor of a million moons. Like lightning gleams the glory of his form, filling the world and the soul with deep joy and sweet ecstasy. Trilokyanath Sanyal, one of Sri Ramakrishna's devotees. So when you see the Lord face to face, you'll feel that maturation of devotion. Enough said about that. Let's go on to cessation of new karmas, which we were talking about there. Interesting that cessation of new karmas, but much later on in the game, destruction of old karmas. So I've already said a little bit about that early on, but new karmas are those, sometimes they call it kriyamani karma. Usually you're used to hearing about past karma, present karma, and future karma. Past karma, as you know from our teachings on karma every year that we take up, speaking about repetition, is arrow already shot out of the bow. You see, there's nothing you can do to call it back. It's gone. It's going to hit the mark. Actually, they quite often define that as the karma you're living right now, present karma. But it comes from the past karma. Every time you're born, you take karma from the past and you work it out in this lifetime. And that's the problem with being on this cycle. See. Now you can be on the cutting edge of this slower cycle by being a seeker. See, but if you're not, if you're backsliding, as we talked about yesterday, then you may be not making much ground every lifetime. And so you're born as a seeker again, and you're born as a seeker again, but you're not getting to such sweet things as that, maturation of devotion. See, you cannot call yourself anurag or something. You see, oh, I've got this great devotion to God that's now uninterrupted. You see. So you're going to be caught, you could be caught on the higher end of that circle, which is better, but you want to not become a professional student, as they say, but you want to get your master's degree and go on, see. Then maybe you can live at the ashram someday, see. Or live near one. So these new karmas come, but what I was talking about, new karmas, quite often to us in this lifetime are called kriyamani karmas. People are calling them fires to put out, you see. You want to get to your life, your practice, your children, your job, whatever it is that you're doing dharmically, we hope. But you keep being put off from it because these things are coming up in your life all the time. It's a common complaint. A lot of people are going through it. Difference, again, between backsliding and backtracking. Sometimes you have to go back and fill in gaps, you see. And so that you can go on. It's unavoidable. It's not ideal, but it's going to put you in a more ideal place for your future karma, which hopefully will be all good. You see, it's all good, they say, right? Sometimes when they say that, it's just lip service. You'll see them 2 months later. It's all bad. Your mantra isn't balanced out. You see, you're switching mantras. You want to say someday to me, it's all transcendent. The good and bad are the same, you see. I'm not trying to shirk the bad or just look for the good, or I'm not afraid of death and I'm just looking for life in cycles. I've transcended, you see. I'm living in my true nature now, and this most likely is my last lifetime. I'm talking about living with the swamis. Questions would come up in their presence, and I'd say something like, it's true that when you come to Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and get the mantra, it's your last lifetime. That's what we've heard. And the swamis would look at us Westerners and say, yeah, maybe one or two more. Maybe one or two more for you, you see. If you stay with the path, you see, because old habits die hard. Old samskaras die hard. And that's really going to be dependent on your ability to concentrate. That's the sixth limb of yoga, right? Dharana, they call it. Adhara system. You see. You're going to be able to concentrate on the fact that you're not these sheaths. And the more you can hold that, then the more you can meditate. Ability to meditate comes next. If you can meditate on that fact, it's better than just concentrating on it, because if you're concentrating on it, you're putting forth an effort to try and convince yourself you're not the sheaths. But when you've mastered that, you can let go of that and just meditate on the fact that you're not the sheaths. See? And this is where meditation becomes natural and easy. And you're inclined to sit longer. And, you don't have this intense look on your face. You're relaxed. So cessation of new karmas, those fires that are coming up and burning, stamping them out all the time, that's not good. You're called here and there and takes you away from the direction of your life. People who take up karma from the past, sanchita, and bring it into the present, prarabdha, then they want to be about the business that they came to the body for. It's like getting rid of that chunk of karma they took on. If you can take all the karma from past lifetimes and work it out in this lifetime, that's most fortunate. And we think people coming to Sri Ramakrishna are ready to do that. You see, they just have to make sure that they don't backslide. See, there was backtracking, right? And hopefully you've filled all that in now. But now you can be backsliding back to old habits, because in one lifetime you still have memories, you see, of being under the press of desire or being ignorant. So you can think back to your childhood, for instance, but you also may be able to think back to your crib, when you were in a crib and you saw the third eye open. You just come from transcendence. Now you've limited yourself in a body and been born in a womb, and you hope it's a womb with a view, but quite often it's not. So then you have to get a better birth, you see, and so forth. So that'll be predicated on a whole life of striving. How else do you get free but by striving? And there again, then you might be tempted to backslide later. You'll attain something, rest on your laurels, and backslide. That's common in worldly pursuits. Oh, I've got enough money now in the bank, my job's secure, you think, and so forth, and then you just rest in that for a while. But spiritual life doesn't proceed that way. You're never satisfied. As you talk about occult powers, you attain some of those, you see, and you make the mistake of going that direction. The psychic prana, we called it, right? The psychic prana floods the nadis. You start using that for the wrong reasons, for personal gain and for things like healing or things that are of that realm. They're based on the prana, basically. Sri Ramakrishna said, "Oh, that's all the tricks of prana." He was obviously above the need for healing. See? In fact, he would teach Swamiji when he goes, the healthy don't need a doctor. See? So healthy means you're spiritually healthy. If you're living in a culture that's sick all the time, you see, well, then you better start looking for the source of that sickness. If you're looking for it in the body, then you're looking at the furthest out effect of the cause. It's in the mind where the sickness is. That's where it starts. And then you have to realize that the mind will never be healthy. That's the strange thing in Vedanta, you see. It's called manas on purpose. Manas means doubting mind. You have 4 things to your mind in Vedanta: manas, buddhi, ahamkara, and chitta. Thoughts, ego, intelligence, and mind. Manas, mind, means doubting mind, means dual mind. And when they moniker it like that, they mean it's that way by nature. You can't change it. This starts to make sense on a higher level for people who are deep thinkers, because they say, well, I can muck about in the mind all I want with certain new ideologies, let's call them, and ultimately the seers have transcended the mind. That's how they've gotten rid of the whole can of worms. See, I will not take on a mental body again. And if I come down at all and take on a mind, it's going to be no mind or pure mind. I'm not going to call it my mind, like I didn't call it my body when I was in the body and trying to get out of it, you see. So this is for those who are transcendentalists, you see. This path of Ramakrishna Vedanta, we call it sometimes, blends non-duality with Shakta. We talked about that yesterday. So Shakta Advaitavada, if you want to call it that, it's a nice name for it, philosophically speaking in India, blends the heart with the mind. The heart tends to go sentimental on you sometimes, emotional. That's definitely a problem here in the West now. Ashokpa, you want to be non-emotional. Not a popular teaching right now, because your emotions are what make you human. You say, we don't want to be human anymore. We want to be divine. The thing is, we're not human. We're God, walking around on two legs. So why should we be so tender and sentimental about keeping our humanity? That's for teachings around politics and business and things that should be already your good sense, you see. You should be nonviolent. It's the first tenet of yoga. You should be unselfish, the second tenet of yoga. You should be moderate or renounced, third tenet of yoga. And I can go on with the yamas and niyamas of yoga to tell you, this is all about your divine nature. It's about lifting off your human nature. I mean, human nature is that, fivefold. And this Atman is about one. Ekagra, it's about one mind. So back to the mind teaching, manas means doubting mind, so you're going to want to transcend it. It might sound a bit too simplistic. We tend to make things too complex, though. It might be good also to know this simplistic approach so that if you are involved in trying to heal the mind, you can do it in such a way that you don't get caught in it. See? You can help others step out of it. Because when you meditate and go into deep sleep, you're not in your mind anymore. Guess what? You see? So it must be possible that you get out of your mind. I could sing you a song. See? Drive me completely out of my mind, O Mother. Dash this tendency to reason all the time. You see? Talk about increasing your devotion. See? Well, devotion is what's missing in the scientist. It's what's missing in the worldly person. And it's also strangely missing in the jnani sometimes, the person who follows the wisdom path without the heart. So back to what I was saying, you want the mind to check the heart so it doesn't become too emotional and too sentimental. And you want that heart in its true form to check the mind so it doesn't become too sterile and too rational, you see, because you're going to have to lift off that mind soon. That's that hot air balloon you're talking about that throws out the sandbags. And when you get outside the mind, you'll be able to say, I'm not my mind, nor am I mind. I've been driven completely out of my mind. I see I'm a transcendent entity. You see, I'm the Atman. I'm Brahman. I'm free. I was always free. I just identified with these 4 or 5 sheaths, and then I limited myself, you see. Now the person who identifies with the 5 sheaths is bound and forgets the Atman. But the person who just associates with the 5 sheaths, they can get free anytime they want, you see. That's a master or a past master. I'll take on the forms, come right down by sets of 5s. Here's one set of 5s. But the other 5s, of course, are 5 elements, 5 senses, 5 dream senses, 5 dream elements, so forth, 5-fold mind. Come right down into the mess of 5s that, if I'm not careful, become thousands. You know what the Tantrists call that? Evolutive Maya? Shatavadana. Thinking of 1,000 things at once. That's one of the evolutes of Maya, that queen of 4-letter words. See? So, doesn't it sort of sound like the multitasking mind of today? Fine, if you can be facile with your mind and be, have that much facility, great. But if you've forgotten the one amidst the many, Sri Krishna said, if you have a bunch of zeros put on end, they add up to 0 in the end. All you need to do is put a 1 in front of them, and it's a huge number. It's valuable. So put that Atman first and foremost. Know yourself to be that. And know all the rest of this just to be passing, changing phenomena. You don't even really have to say, is it real or is it unreal? If that's too much for your mind. See? You just have to say, it passes and changes, and Brahman doesn't. Means I don't. I've been witnessing all this change for thousands of lifetimes. When am I going to get free? Oh, another song, you see. Oh, Mother, when will I join the company of Jesus, Moses, Gauranga, Krishna, and dance with them in ecstasy? A beautiful song someone wrote in India, you see. So, some information about these first four, right, in a row. Maturation of devotion, cessation of new karmas, ability to concentrate, ability to meditate. That's going to be very, very good for you. See? And then we talk about next, intensification of yogic fire. Vivekananda made the statement once, he had diabetes toward the end and they couldn't treat it back then. So he used to call it foul disease. See? Anyway, he passed away at 39, and that is at 39 years of age. And once he said, up here in the Himalayas, when I retire from the workplace down there, from helping people and so forth, I feel very good. I don't need to eat. All I have is maybe a scripture there, and I sit on the mountains in the snow, and I take out my scripture and read it, and I meditate, see, and I'm perfectly well. Now all I have is the fire of yoga, see. So intensification of that fire of yoga is transcends disease, transcends the workplace, puts one in a perfectly pure and free place, which is one's own true nature. See, so, I mean, if you wanted to sing it in a song again, we've referred so much to it, that is this, these slokas of Guru Stotram. And this way, it's put this way. It's the intensification of the fire of yoga, I mean. Sloka. So, aneka janma sampraptir karmin dana vidahine atma jnana agni tanena. Atman, jnana, fire, atma jnana agni, you see, the fire of wisdom, jnana agni. So that translates as, I salute the eternal teacher and offer him my eternal salutations, because he's kindled the fire of self-knowledge within me, Atma Jnana Agni Danena, and as a result of kindling that fire, has destroyed the many karmas that have accumulated over many lifetimes. So you hear this truth once, if you're a receptive soul, and all the karmas get destroyed. See, all these new karmas. You don't go forming them anymore. It would be against your nature, once you found out that you're the Atman, eternal, to be caught in the net of karma. You don't want to get caught. You want free at that point. You realize that you've always been free, but you've just forgotten the fact. So now you want to quickly return to that state of ultimate freedom. So, reverent salutations to that ultimate Guru, who appears to you in the form of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the Trinity. See, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara. Deva Maheshwara is a name for Shiva. So I salute that. Yeah, it appears to you in the form of the Trinity, but it's Guru Eva Param Brahma. Last line, right? Sometimes they call that Guru Sakshi Param Brahma. When I went to India, I was singing it Guru Eva, but then I sang it for the children, and I was surprised to know that they knew it. They were surprised to know that I knew it. But then when I started singing it for them in some of the schools for orphans that Ramakrishna order had founded in India, to take them off the streets, and then they would like happily sing it, you see. They'd start bouncing around. Oh, I know that one, just like we would when we hear a song on the radio, you see. Only for better reasons. Not for sentimental reasons, for instance, because they have a guru. The Ramakrishna order came and saved them right off the streets. And their devotion is going to be maturing right there, as little souls, as it were. So anyway, they'd be bouncing around singing that, and I would be singing Guru Eva Param Brahma, and they'd be singing Guru Sakshi Param Brahma. So when I did the recording, I put both in. That recording is on Jaya Ho Vivekananda CD, which we've just put out recently for Swami's 150, Vivekananda's 150th centenary, or sequicentennial, I guess it would be called. So that means Guru Eva means one. The Guru is one. So my point there appears to you as the Trinity. That's how you will know God in form. But it's really this Guru Eva. It's the one supreme soul, or Guru, which we talked about yesterday, which is in all of us. In quantity and in quality. Call it Atman if you will. Same. Even in rocks and stones. It's same Atman. Because why? Because he is omniscient. See, Brahman is omniscient. So in everything, equally. It's just that you'd probably rather be born as a man than a mountain, you see. Because a human being has the ability to realize that Atman. Mountains and stones and so forth don't. Those forms are without this very specialized mechanism, this nervous system, these inner nadis that are flowing when they're opened, right? So you could say all insentient things come from unmanifested Prakriti, but all living beings in their essence come from Brahman. The good way where you have that discrimination between Purusha and Prakriti, or Brahman and Maya. See, insentient things all stored back in the unmanifested Prakriti in seed form and come forward again, sometimes many times, repeat themselves. But sentient soul doesn't get stored in unmanifested Prakriti. Only its thoughts do, you see. But it itself comes right out of Brahman. It is one with Brahman. The Jivatman is the Paramatman. Jiva is Shiva, as my teacher used to put. But it has to realize that fact, otherwise it might as well just be a rock or an island. I am a rock, I am an island. No, you're not, Paul, you're the Atman. I'd love to get into every old recording the West ever made, and just like, every commercial that came out on TV. Every movie that was ever made, and just all of a sudden have my own microphone. After the fact, after they've seen it 1,000 times, and say, no, you're not, you're the Atman. Time left is probably waning. We've got about 5 minutes before, so intensification of yogic fire then. I salute my guru who has awakened the fire of wisdom in that third eye. Jnanagni, the previous birth says, Jnanagni danena. And then it goes on to say, Atma Jnanagni danena. So both verses mention this third eye, and they mention the intensification of the yogic fire that happens when that center is opened. So this is sort of a tantric teaching about food. So the Kundalini is also shared by the tantric system. It has these 7 chakras, they call them. You see, when this one opens, which as I've often said, and I made a chart on it, of course, that there are 7 or 8 different religions that mention that center here between the eyebrows. Taoism, Confucianism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, if thine eye be single, on and on. You can see how that's been a very important center for awakening humanity. That is, saints, seers, sages, saviors, maybe even the savant, if you want to add another S word, that makes that turn out of cycles into spiritual life. Begins to add on that amelioration, the accretion of spiritual qualities and attributes to the knowledge it already has. So I say we could criticize quantum physics, or we could criticize biology and medicine. There are many ills that are coming out of worldly occupations. Not just the ills themselves, like, oh, you think you can create disease with a pill, and so now drugs is a problem. But the people themselves that are in them and believing in the systems are creating, like lawyers. I have a few students who are lawyers, and they're not happy with their profession. It's just so many problems in it, and it's getting worse in the world. See, so it's like that old joke, if you're in the same room with Hitler and Saddam Hussein and a lawyer, and you have a gun with 2 bullets, what do? You shoot the lawyer twice. That's how they're thinking, you see. So, I mean, that's, don't take me literally, folks. I just said ahimsa is where nonviolence is where we're at. So, then anyway, the problems with worldly preoccupations is both in the system itself and with the people who are supporting it or into it, you see. So that's going to be something you're going to need to transcend. You could continue being a lawyer, maybe. Few people I've talked to lately, these students I mentioned, they're really thinking of getting out of the profession. It's just, they cannot be spiritual seekers and lawyers at the same time. Unless they forbear these ills that are in the profession. They're, I'd say naturally in the profession. They can get worse, but the profession starts off on a wrong footing. For instance, money is a wrong footing to start anything on. And isn't that what we base everything on? The gaining of wealth. Dharmic wealth, that would be entirely different. It would be what came to you from what you do naturally and what you're not attached to. So you'd go to the karma yoga system and you'd start following the laws of selflessness. You wouldn't do your work for yourself. You'd do it for others. Maybe that's how you would transform the profession of law, by just completely serving those people. But you get into that, you see, and then basically you have these problems of the boss, you see, and the corporation, what they want out of you. You can start to be good-hearted and so forth, and they'll say, oh, you're fired, you see, or you can't do that, you must do this ignoble thing. And I'm hearing it all the time from my students, not just in that profession, but in other professions. How to keep your integrity and nobility and higher aims in mind while you're dealing with the world. It's one of those things that is a challenge here on this plane of existence. So we've run out of time, but we can start right there at destruction of old karmas. It would be a great place to start the second half. Remember, this is our only set of classes for the live streaming audience and for us in my 3-week visit here in Portland, because next week is our retreat in Seattle on Panchadasi and Panchakarna, and then the following weekend the seminar on how the householder renounces the world. So these will be the only Taittiriya Upanishad classes. We'll pick them up again in May, late April and May when I come back. We just secured my air ticket yesterday for that, so that's in there. I'll be here in San Francisco late April and into early May and here in Portland. So we'll have maybe 4 classes on Taittiriya Upanishad then. In the meantime, study it very well in the light of these commentaries from beings like your guru and who he learned from, Sheshananda, Swami Vivekananda, and all under the light of the umbrella of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, whose birthday we are celebrating. Jai Shri Ram Krishna. Now we pause here for 15 minutes while the live streaming audience can look at this chart, and we'll get some prasad. Thank you for your kind attention.
And we have a little
In the remaining 1 hour we have or so for this final Taittiriya Upanishad class in Portland on this particular visit, we'll want to finish up this chart on the role of food and prana in self-realization. It's really a chart that hooks together the teaching of the Annamaya and Pranamaya Koshas, which the Taittiriya Upanishad is telling us about right now. There are actually 3 slokas on prana, and the one coming up tells us that there is whatever gods or men or animals exist, all of them depend on prana for their life. Truly, prana is the life duration of the animate world. On that ground, it is regarded as the universal life, sarvayusham. Those who contemplate prana as Brahman assuredly attain the full span of life. For prana is the life of creatures, and is therefore called the entire duration of life. The embodied self of the former one is verily this one, that is, the Annamaya Kosha is really dependent on the Pranamaya Kosha for its life. Now, other than the self consisting of prana, there is within it another self consisting of manas, mind, by which this pranamaya self is filled. This one also is of the form of a person, according to the other ones being in the shape of a person. Yajus is his head, Rik is his right wing, Sama is his left wing. The injunctive part of the Vedas means really the Brahmanas are his trunk, and the hymns of the Atharva Veda are his support and foundation. With regard to this, there is also the following stanza. So they're, again, continuing this on and on into these several stanzas in Lesson 2 about the 5 koshas, and they're going to lead us toward the Vijnanamaya kosha, then the Anandamaya kosha. I don't know if we'll make it that far today. We'll pick it back up in May when I return. But back to the sloka that we're working on then, it has to do specifically with the Pranamaya kosha. We've been showing how food, leading with mantra, with exercise, with spiritual exercise, discipline, results in more vibrant life force. And then we've been taking it up the left-hand side of this chart as to see how to get out of transmigration and cycles, get on with life, how to end cycles of transmigration, which would be even lives of say, dharmic lives, because you're still looking for enlightenment through dharma, to get into this spiritual life per se, which would really make you be in possession of all these higher qualities. They call that dharma mega samadhi. There's dharma and all the teachings, and then eventually you get dharma mega samadhi. It's a kind of state of realization where you find all these qualities are actually inside of you all the time. And just like everything else that you had forgotten or put away from yourself, you're getting closer and closer to that center, the center of your being, which would be called Atman, which is really very well illustrated by this target kind of chart. You know, take these Upanishads as the bow, fasten to it the arrow of mind, made sharpened by thoughts on reality alone, release and penetrate the mark. So you're going right toward the bullseye, literally and symbolically both in a chart like that. Realizing what you always were and always are. But it consists literally of sloughing off coverings, like a snake does its skin. You just quit identifying with the outer, and then you go to the subtle, and you see what that is, and you disidentify with that, and you go to the causal, and you see what that is, and you disidentify with that ultimately, at least, temporarily, as long as your ignorance about anything persists, you disidentify with those things. In the end, you're going to see it all as Brahman, and you'll see your pathway through it as you look back. It's called seeing your past lifetimes. And you'll see that you are the one strand that ran through all the pearls of every life. You were that one connecting point. That is you. And they call that the witness of all phenomena, being a seer or sakshibhutam. Everything that changed and passed was actually in you, and you saw it inside of yourself. Before you got enlightened, you just imagined that it was all going on outside yourself, and there was all these separations and barriers, illustrated here by 5 coverings. And then you finally disidentified with those and quit associating, or quit identifying with them completely, and then you could reassociate with them later and do your higher work in the world. They call that your swadharma. Adharma is living without knowledge of higher truth. Dharma is seeking higher truth, and swadharma is finding your highest destiny, that which you always are. And that swadharma was at the foundation of everything that you projected. All your lives, all your actions, all your seeking, at all levels. Lower wisdom, higher wisdom, that is aparavidya, and paravidya was all within you at all times. That's why I quoted yesterday about Vivekananda, where's about time and space. Where's the time which the soul will come and go when all of time is within? And where's the space to which it will go and from which it will depart when all space is within you? A very beautiful way of summating the unmoved mover and the unseen seer and the unstruck sound and all these appellations we studied yesterday. So with that, sort of to warm us up again to this 45 minutes or so of wrap-up of this chart, we had arrived at intensification of yogic fire and then the destruction of old karmas. Now both in Tantra and in Patanjali's yoga, which is really the authentic yoga, the 8-limbed yoga, which is fairly recent, probably 140 or 50 AD, Patanjali was born. Of course, he had incarnations as a great teacher before them and after, as Shankara's guru, for instance. Gaudapada and his student, then Shankara came after them, you see. So Gaudapada's student was his teacher, and that was supposed to be an incarnation of Patanjali. That was around 700 AD. So again, every 500 years, these souls, will make an appearance, and you won't necessarily recognize them as who they were or appeared as in a past lifetime. So in yoga and in Tantra, you'll find this same teaching that's kind of sobering at first and a little bit of a slap in the face when you thought you had gotten rid of all your karmas that you're creating and you're just living in a very balanced state. And then you start meditating in that balanced state, and then you start seeing the real problems inside of you, the subtle problems. Like, just stop drinking coffee, or maybe take up a habit of meditation to fill in that void of non-meditation, as I was talking about yesterday. Seeing God face to face is that third and real meditation that you want to undertake after you've cleared the mind field and studied your dreaming and deep sleep states. Then you see God face to face, and that's the third and ultimate type of realization. So as you perfect the outer self, as it were, which perfect here means you can't perfect the body because it's full of foul stuff and it always will be. You can't perfect the mind because it's dual by nature. You can't perfect the sheath of intelligence because it is a sheath, and it can only contain so much, and the ego is influencing it, calling it my knowledge. That's why the two are in cahoots there. They're so close to one another. The Anandamaya Kosha and the Vijnanamaya Kosha. We'll have slokas about that a little bit later on in a chart about each of them as we go on. But back to that point there is that this Anamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha connection with the mind, Manomaya Kosha, as you inspect the mind with purer energy, Pranamaya Kosha, from mantra and food and all of that, then you're beginning to you find your new karmas aren't such a problem. You can start increasing punya and destroying papa. That is your everyday affairs, right? Everything seems like pretty balanced. That's called what? A guna. Sattva, thank you. It's not most people's life going back and forth between rajas and tamas, right? Restlessness and slothfulness. But actually you've reached sattva. And this is why precisely that you can't stop at sattva. Because you haven't seen the Anandamaya Kosha yet, whose whole business is about sattva. You see, it wants bliss, it wants peace, it wants happiness. And you have to get over that, because that's an individual, limited happiness. It's not the peace that passes all understanding yet. It's not the bliss that is unalloyed and uninterrupted. That belongs to the Atman and to the Atman only. See? So this is precisely why you sattva won't do it for you. It's a gold chain. There's an iron chain, rajas and tamas, but there's also a gold chain that you've put on. And so you're living in this kind of state of everyday, I'm all right, you're all right kind of idea, you see. And everything's never all right in Maya. As long as anything's in Maya. As long as your consciousness is at all identified with any level of Maya, it's not all right. It has to be disassociated from that as an art form, as a realization. You have to be living in a non-dual state of mind. That will put you beyond sattva, your ego's desire for happiness, which is a misnomer. There is no happiness on earth. There is no fulfillment on earth. How many times do they have to tell us that? The first noble truth, there is suffering. If you don't accept that, you can't be a Buddhist. And why? Precisely because all manifest, create things are empty by nature. Shunyata, they're empty. When you come to realization of shunyata, it's not the highest realization, but it is that realization that will act as a springboard to get you beyond sattva, because then you won't settle for less. See? You won't settle for happiness alone, or even contentment, or even equanimity. You know, you'll want to go beyond mind that is even, beyond even mind. You see, to transcendent mind. It's just not available to most people's understanding to comprehend that. Te dhyan yoga nugata pasyan devatma shaktim svagunayar nagudam yaha karnani nikilani tani kalatma yuktanya adidistat yekaha, the wise man over here on my left says. So it means that practicing the yoga of meditation, they finally saw the devatma shaktim, the divine energy in everything, divine energy in everything, which had been restricted to them earlier. Why? Because of the limitations of their own intelligence. That's that sattvic plane, you see. They arrive there and everyone thinks, I can stay there. This is the goal of spiritual life. But according to Buddhism, shunyata would be that doorway. And according to yoga, kaivalya would be that. Kaivalya means separation from nature. You want a divorce. I've been in the bath long enough. I'm clean. If you stay in the bath too long, you get wrinkled, right? What's that mean? Too many births with old age. Wrinkles your skin, you see, again and again. So I want free to my birthless, deathless nature, because that's who I am, and that's who what the seers have told me. That's what my guru's been teaching. That's what the wise exult in. Therefore, let's cut to the chase here. Let's get free. And then we can come back free, like Ramakrishna did. Or we can stay in a disembodied state, which is unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss, beyond the Anandamaya Kosha, to the Chidgana, to the mass of bliss. Ultimate reality, birthless, deathless, timeless awareness, however you want to put it, moksha, mukti, kaivalya, nirvana, satori, sampragyata. So these destruction of old karmas stand in the way. And that means you have created these samskaras out of, and used them to get back into the body. Now, if you're using them consciously to do so, it would be like Swamiji saying, "Oh, I'll come back again to eat chocolate ice cream." You see, he's joking. You discovered chocolate ice cream in the West, he said, jokingly, "Well, I'll come back for that." But when he's not joking, he's saying, "I will take as many births as I need, thousands of births, if I can come back and help only one soul get free." So there has to be a samskara in order to do that. So I've been saying that about Western samskaras. We have none for spirituality. We have none for non-dual philosophy. They're not there. It's like calling out, "Who am I?" into the canyon. There's no canyon wall to come back, you see. But if there's a canyon wall, it comes back, "You're an idiot," you see, or "You're a Brahman." It tells you where you are. Samskaras let you know where you are. If it's a samskara for a lawyer, and your father was a lawyer, and your grandfather was a lawyer, and that's becoming a problem, then you're going to have to change your samskaras, unless you want to come back again as a lawyer. Same with a camel who eats thorny bushes. If you're not happy with eating thorny bushes, you'll quit eating them, you see. You'll transcend your camel body. Your camel psyche will look for some other host. Same with a drug addict, you see, or a life criminal, you see, samskaras for doing wrong and so forth, or the mentally challenged soul, retarded, see, coming back again in that very difficult position and causing problems to itself and to others. So old karmas are there, and I would venture to say that by the time you reach them, you're probably well beyond any of those examples I just mentioned. See, lawyers, camels, and crack babies. You're beyond that. So, good news, you see, for you. But you still have these old karmas coming back at you, and they're that final bastion of tendrils of old baggage that you want to alleviate yourself of, you see. Like you're at the train station at night, they let you off at midnight at this station that's very lonely and secluded. Train pulls away. You're there all alone at night with your baggage. And there are thieves and robbers out in the bushes, just waiting. You can either fall asleep, nor can you walk away from your baggage to call a friend, to come get me, or a taxi. And so that's your predicament with these old karmas. You can either go away and be free, and you have to be tending them all the time. It's a imposition on your freedom-loving soul. See, and you're already tasting the bliss of the Anandamaya Kosha. You're about to actually make a step from individual bliss to universal bliss. You have a chance for that. You're qualified for it. It's an opportunity of the highest order for you to get free in this lifetime, Jivan Mukta. So enough of explanation about that to make you understand that these old karmas are going to have to be dealt with, and they're very subtle because they're from past lifetimes. They could be from your very last lifetime. Now, there are situations that people look and act like animals. So their last lifetime probably was an animal. You see that. You come across that. Like we just met this little boy who the only way he can relate was to put his tongue on things. That's how he uses one sense to see his world. If he has your hand, he'll, he's in front of a wall, he'll see. This is a, very limited soul in there. So if you don't have opportunity to be around those kinds of people, if you're living in a whole different strata of society, call it intellectual society or the rich, or the rich and famous, then you never see that, so you're never going to believe that such a thing as reincarnation can happen, or such a thing as regression can happen. You say, oh, they just regressed to a very bad state, but I don't believe that they were an animal in a last lifetime, you see. But there are, of course, some very intellectual people who are still acting like animals. So the opposite's also true. So there are some very heavy karmas, sandbags, in the case of those souls. These lighter sandbags, in the case of more buoyant souls, are going to feel like heavy impositions to you because you're so close to that taste of freedom you're getting that these things are even more onerous. See, there's a way they're suggesting themselves to you. It's like if you had a heavy bag, you just say, okay, I'm not going to get free. But if you had just a tiny little thing to hold on to, it would be worse than the heavy thing, you see, because it just should be so easy to get rid of, but you can't quite find it to eliminate it. That's what they mean here in Tantra and Yoga by these subtle karmas, these karmas from past lifetimes. At a very high level, they're occurring to you. And here's why backsliding is one of the higher of the spiritual antaryayas of yoga. Backsliding and creating a habit of failure in spiritual life, not in earthly life. We know about creating a habit of failure in worldly life. It's like that. Everyone sees that and deals with that. But creating a habit of failure in spiritual life means I'm trying to reach the highest goal and I keep failing. And then I convince myself that I can't do it. And then I start backsliding. So alabdha bhumikattva and anavasti tattvani are the two spiritual obstacles that Patanjali illustrates at this level. A little bit that is pointing to these old karmas, I can really not very easily tell you what they are. I'd have to, individual to individual, watch you for a few decades, and you'd have to meet with me, and we'd have to discuss it until finally one day you would, by using your mantra, and we say the grace of God, I awoke, and my ignorance was gone, gone, utterly gone. Another song. One day I awoke and my ignorance was gone, gone, utterly gone. Holy Mother dealt with people who were Indian souls, as it were, mostly because she never came west. But they would come to her and talk with her about feeling these impositions. And she said, those impositions, those desires are nothing to you. You're the child of Ramakrishna now. You're my children. The more they come and go for you, the better. The more these desires come and go for you, the better. So you reach at such a higher level that these things are not going to be impositions anymore. You're as if already through with them. You're going to spit them out and not go back to them anymore. She often described them as, the three colors of thread winding on the spool, black, white, and red. And then when you take refuge in a great path like this, a great being, the spool stops and begins to roll the other way and the thread comes off in the opposite direction. You have to feel these karmas in reverse. It's one of her teachings to explain the subtlety of them, is that you come back and you complain, well, I'm still thinking lustful things, or I'm still having anger, or I still have problems with such and such. And she tells you, that's the spool spinning off in the opposite direction. You spin them on in a slow mini-lifetime process. When they spin off, it's going to take one lifetime. So you feel these discomforts go away from you. And, sort of like the intensification of the fire of yoga burns them away. That's why it's a penultimate step to that. And you develop the fire of yoga to do that precise thing. It's not like, oh, I'm a great yogi now, you see. I can sit up in the Himalayas in the snow barefoot, which Ramakrishna's devotees did. But it's more like I'm getting ready for the ultimate assault on the bastion of ignorance, on the final gateway, see, to non-duality. And then I'm going to penetrate through and I'm going to attain, and I'm not going to have a habit of failure anymore, and I'm not going to backslide ever again. So some more in-depth teachings, dharmically speaking, about that very strange appearance of karmas again, very late in your spiritual life. And so they'll spin off in one lifetime, you see. Or depending on how intense you can make that fire, if you're constantly adding into its flames mantra and hours of meditation and study of scriptures and getting this Dharma Mega Samadhi under your belt, digesting the teachings, not just the pigeon that keeps the corn and peas in its craw, but passes and gets down to the stomach and you actually digest it, then these old karmas will be something you can deal with. But remember, it's going to be one day I awoke and my ignorance was gone. You're not going to see them go away. You're not going to have the satisfaction of seeing them go away. People actually get kind of caught up on that one and say, well, when will this go away? I don't know. You decide. See? It's that subtle. Why is it that subtle? Because ignorance is an illusion. Om pramadina na sandeyaha kim karishyani vrittiman prapadyante vilyante buddhischa yata jale. So, ignorance is unreal. Therefore, how can it cause any real doubt? So all your doubt is based on a false premise called ignorance. This is the original sin of Vedanta. It's called root ignorance, mula vidya. You started off on a wrong footing, so everything from there on is based on a wrong footing, you see. So you have to backtrack. Ouch. See? But you do it and you go back, and then later on backsliding is going to be a problem. See? You have to get rid of the old and bring in the new, then you have to make sure the new is authentic. New lamps for old means you give away your old lamp and you get this new lamp, but then you find out your old lamp had more value than this fake metal thing that he sold you. See? You didn't examine it. So ignorance is unreal. How can it cause any real doubt? Therefore, what should the yogi or the yogini do with this mind and its projections? Everyone has minds and projections, right? Even the seer has to have that samskaric wall of some kind to come into the body. Got to have some sort of karma to hold on to keep them there. Our problem is that we have karmas that we're holding on to. Their problem, they're enlightened, if it is a problem, is they have to take on a karma in order to be in the body. Now Krishna is trying to come down to you, and that's hard for him. We're trying to get up to him, as it were, you see, but he's not having the same problem we are. So what should the yogi do with this mind and its projections? He should let them rise naturally and then dissolve them all like bubbles into water. Buddhascha. Buddhism sounds like bubbles, see? Buddhascha, yata jale. Dissolve them all into, like bubbles into water. So if you continue doing this with your thought projections, like say at the end of every day, like we were talking about, in the morning when you dissolve everything into your, you see how you came back out of waking and dreaming state and how you dissolve everything in and out of it every 24 hours. You get masterful at this, then these old karmas become weakened. And you can go on towards the ability to teach and transmit, which is straight across the board from Tejas. All of this is across the board from Ojas, as it were. But now you're coming to this ability where I have this clear light, free of all hocus pocus. Who said that? Swami Vivekananda. I have a clear light now, free of all hocus pocus. Said. All the hocus pocus was what he saw us doing in 1893 when he came here. Mm-hmm. We were gathering. Most of us had no idea about spirituality. Those who were spiritual were having seances in their living room and crystal ball gazing, tarot card reading, and big tent revivals. That's what he saw. He said that. But I have a clear light now, free of all that hocus pocus. That's all chance. That's all in Maya. My light is not in the ego. It's in the Atman. See? It's full of bliss, not tempered happiness or contentment. It's not sattva. I got over that. So defining these really fine levels. You come across the old karmas, and then once you're through those, then you're qualified to transmit, give the teachings to others. And it will be obvious that you are. Direct disciples asked Master about that. He said, don't worry. When the lotus blooms in the wood, the bees come of their own accord. See? You don't have to send them an engraved invitation. Swami Ramakrishnananda went south. I'm not saying that in any negative way. Nothing went south for him, really. He went to the south of India, and he started teaching Ramakrishna, spreading the word of his master down there, and nobody was coming. And, 1900s and so forth. So he was acquired this place, and he began talking. And then he wrote back complaining to Swami Vivekananda, nobody's coming. So he said, just keep at it. Keep talking, keep lecturing. So he would lecture to an empty hall. No one was there, and he'd go out and give the lecture anyway. Talk about an example for teachers of the Dharma here in the West. So gradually people started coming, whether it was out of curiosity or whether somebody thought this might be an authentic soul. It was probably like, he's strange, I got to go see him. He lectures to an empty hall. I think I'll go see what he's saying. So people started gathering, and now south of India is one of the greatest Ramakrishna centers in existence. So many people come to it. I go down there and go into the new temple and so forth there and meditate, and yes, thousands of Hindus flow through there every month. So all because of Ramakrishnananda's work there and his perseverance. See, so ability to teach and transmit, he had that. Our founder, Lex Hixon, had a teacher called Swami Nikhilananda, who came from India. And when the Ramakrishna order sent Nikhilananda to New York, he complained and said, I don't have authority to teach. And the Ramakrishna Swami president said to him, you're not going there to teach, you're going there to share what you know. Oh, we'll put it that way, you see. That's beyond the Anandamaya Kosha. See? There's no ego to that knowledge. I can go and just distribute it, see, freely. So that's a penultimate station, as you see there. If we want to jump to it, Kundalini ascends. The Kundalini has been awakening and headed toward the Sahasrara chakra. That's called thousand-petaled up here. So she's even thinking, maybe I can take the soul beyond the third eye and get him into the pool of bliss there. Dunk him in there once in a while, and then he can come back down. Sri Ramakrishna, a very humorous thing, said, I myself ran a boat race between these three chakras all the time. He ran a boat race. So it was like his vehicle was in there, see his boat, and he was sometimes here, sometimes here, sometimes here, then he'd have to come back down again. So he was like going back and forth between the three highest centers all the time in order to, because, you don't teach from here. It's impossible. There's no teacher left. There's no person to be taught there. There are no individual souls anymore. You're it. You see, it's like the greatest game of cosmic tag. You're it. I am that. I am Atma Brahma. This self is Brahman. It's the hailstone is already dissolved in the ocean. I'm not coming back again. So in those special souls, Ramakrishna said, who have the ability to come back out of the Sahasrara into the third eye and then come down here to teach, that's a boat race you have to run. And Tejas is there helping you do it. By its presence, illumined beings inspire and uplift others who striving or suffering. When Christ said, the kingdom of heaven is within you, people know that saying, but they don't read the surah after it, right after it. It says, those kingdoms are of sojourn and of rest. So somebody said, you're saying kingdom of heaven within you, you keep saying kingdoms of heaven. Kingdoms. I'm making it plural. You're changing Christ's saying. I say, what he meant was the kingdom of heaven ultimately with a capital H, but when you talk about the kingdoms of heaven, he's talking about those lokas. We call them lokas. Those chambers in the chamber, those chambers in the mansion of the Lord that are of sojourn and are of rest. See? So beings are going back and forth between periods of rest and periods of sojourn. Vedanta calls that dreaming. Mass collective mental dreaming. And when you awake from the dream, it's indescribable. It's not like the indescribable of Langendorf bread, you see, which is still vibrating there. Franz, is it? Yeah. Grow, grow, grow. See, so nutritious, utterly delicious. You see. It's not like that. It's the indescribable of Ananda. You're saying that word, you see, is in San Francisco last week. You're saying there's no opposite to Ananda like there is to joy or to happiness, sorrow, and so forth. There's no opposite to that bliss, because you can't put an A in front of it. It would be Ananda. It's like you're stuttering or something. See, Ananda. Because you put an A in front of Nitya, it becomes Unnitya. Nitya is eternal. If you put an A in front of it, it becomes the non-eternal. So you have the non-eternal and the eternal. But you can't do that with this Ananda that comes from this highest center, Sahasrara. It doesn't have an opposite. Once you're there, all dualities are dissolved, like bubbles in water. So something about the penultimate state here, according to this tantric rendering, then you get to transcendent or transcendent experiences of a very high nature. So, as it were, you went from something like this. Monopoli Pajakali Icha Hoi Torjaya Chari Guru Data Mahamantra Divanishi Japa Kori Monopoli Pajakali. Means you went from being a playful mind that could meditate in anything in any way it wanted. See, Guru Datta Mahamantra. I got the great mantra of the age from my teacher, and then I began to practice. You go from something like that to something more like this. Manas chakshuradir vimuktaha svayam yo. Manas chakshuradir manas chakshuradihi. Manas chakshuradir agamya swarupaha. Sanitya palabdis swarupaha matmam. Manas, chakshur, the eye of the mind. You go to this place that's bereft of sense experience. Even when it's bereft of sense experience, it sees everything. Even when it's beyond mental cognition, it knows everything. Even when it's devoid of vital functions, prana, it's still flowing as Kundalini power. See? Prana leaves off, leaves you with psychic prana. Psychic prana leaves off, leaves you with Kundalini herself, Shakti. These are all connected. Out the gate, down to the base, back home, you see, back to the source. So even bereft of sense experience, mental cognition, and vital functions, that eternal reality continues to exist, for it relies upon nothing else. Atman does not rely upon its five sheaths. They rely upon it. It is that Atman which animates the senses, impels the life force, and awakens the mind. As we were just saying, Manomaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, and Annamaya Kosha get their animation and power from this ultimate source. Sri Ramakrishna used to say it's like the kid in the kitchen. He sees his mother boiling vegetables. So he walks up and he says, "Look, Ma, the vegetables are dancing." And she says, "Oh, it's not the vegetables that are dancing, it's the water, you see, that's being boiled that is making them dance." Then the father walks in and says, "It's actually not the water, my dear, that's causing the vegetables to dance. It's the heat under the burner that's causing the water to get hot, and then the vegetables dance." Then the grandmother walks in. Says, "Well, son, not exactly. You see, it's actually the gas in the stove that's causing the pot to get hot and the water to get hot and the vegetables to dance." And then Granddad comes in, the authority, you see. No, not quite, my dear. It's somewhere outside of our house, through pipes. There's a gas station, see, that pumps gas through the pipes into your home and supplies the stove with this supply of gas that then causes, you see, all of the vegetables to dance. So if you're looking just at the outside, you see this outer effect of a cause. And you have to go to the next cause, and that becomes the effect of a next cause, and so forth and so on. That's the case with the sheaths and the Atman. They're each gross to subtle, finally to causal when you get to the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And really the ultimate cause of it all, and this system would be the ego, is where you took on a separate self and thought yourself, maybe for lifetimes, to be separate from Brahman. Even your religion started telling you, pray to your Father in heaven, as if you were here and he was there, see, as if you were somehow different from the source. How can that be? I and my Father are one. I am Atma Brahma, 5,000 years before that, before Christ said it. The self is Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, one of the most ancient of all Mahavakyas, great sayings. So, he ends it, that perpetual being am I, self-effulgent, illumining the cosmos. I will go teach women in prison tonight. And tomorrow I'll go teach men in prison. And Tuesday I'll go teach men in prison. And wherever I go to prison, then I'm having to tell them, the cosmos is not outside of you only. That's the physical cosmos. When we think of the word in cosmos or cosmology and so forth in the West, we think of space and planets. And we want to go out there. We want to go as far out as we can. We don't know that kingdom of heaven is within. And one of those great levels of it is rest from all activity, from all mental projection, collective, individual, or cosmic. That's why the Trinity becomes an expression of Brahman for us. So here, in this system, without deities mentioned, you're having this Anandamaya Kosha, which we'll get at in May when I come back, as being the sort of cause of all causes. It's that gas that's flowing in the pipes in the oven. But there's a huge reservoir of gas somewhere out there in some building in the neighborhood that's supplying all homes with that power to burn. And that's what the ego is going to have to connect to. See, it's going to have to realize that it has its own little supply of bliss, but that's limiting it. See, individual bliss. And it's coming from all these other koshas, you see, are being filled with it. Their existence is based on the ego. They have no other existence than that. Because when you do away with the Anandamaya kosha, these will all be seen to be unreal, as if they never existed. So where's your premise to stand upon? What shifting sand, as Christ said, are you going to stand on once you realize the Atman? Where does this all go? Poof. And what are you going to stand on then? You probably, if you have no bodies, then you won't need to stand. You talk about taking a stand, you see. That's like against some enemy, but there's no enemies in Brahman. There's nothing there but Brahman. So the Hasta Amalaka Stotram speaks, you see, to that highest level. Stotrams like that. So one of my students, even a couple of them now I think of, has memorized that stotram in Sanskrit and English. I could have them step up in front of the camera right now and recite the entire thing to you. That's So, Hasta Amalaka himself means fruit in the palm of the hand. So he finally attained this fruit, you see, of enlightenment. And at first he didn't speak at all until he was in his early teens. And so his father took him to Shankara when he came to the village. Shankara was touring. He was on his tour, see, with his roadies and so forth. So Shankara came to that village, and the father took his young Brahmin son, who hadn't spoken for 12, 13, 14 years, to Shankara and said, "What's wrong with this boy?" So Shankara turned and looked at that boy. Shankara probably wasn't that much older than the boy. So he died so young, he passed into samadhi so young. The first words that boy ever spoke was this: Namaha manusho na cha deva yaksho na brahma na kshatriya vaishya shudraha na brahmachari na grihiva nasto Bhikshurna chaham nijabodha swarupam. Nijabodha rupaha, I should have sang. So the very form of intelligence. So the first thing the boy ever spoke in his whole life, in that lifetime, later become as named Hasta Amalaka by Shankara. He went away with him, left his parents and wandered. So his parents actually found the so-called problem. He got healed, but then he didn't stay with them. He became a wandering monk. Oops. But the first words he ever spoke was, "I am not a householder. You see. I'm not a merchant. I'm not a warrior. I'm not a monk, as it were. See, I'm none of the four stations of life. I am the Atman, which is the very form of the highest intelligence." First things out of his mouth. See, I am not human, God, inhabiting celestial rooms. Neither am I a priest. I'm not a warrior. I'm not a merchant. I'm not a menial worker. I'm neither monk, householder, hermit, or wanderer. I am the ever-conscious eternal self, infinite and pervading everything. First words out of the boy's mouth. So he wasn't mute and dumb and so forth, his parents had thought. He was a realized soul who had taken birth in the Brahman class, or caste, was just waiting for Shankara to come to town. See? Can I be one of your roadies? I will carry the message for you around India to the 4 cardinal places, see, which Shankara established, 4 places in India. So Hastamalaka speaks, you see, and he speaks, we can make sure it's at the level of these transcendent experiences which are leading you towards the highest level of consciousness. Remember, these chakras aren't part of the spine. You know, that's the body. That's Annamaya Kosha. The spine is the Annamaya Kosha. They're vortexes inside of the subtle body and of the causal body, kingdoms of heaven within you. They're worlds of sojourn and rest, and of action and inaction, less and less action until you're the inactive actor. So the more enlightened way, or really the only way you should be contemplating them, you know. It's not like, oh, if I, go to the chiropractor, my chakras will awaken. That's just opening up some physical nadis so that energy can get to your organs, isn't it? Because if you don't have that flow down here at the level of food and health, then, how are you going to take those channels and use them to go to these channels of prana and psychic prana? You see, say chiropractor will tell you there's a nerve there. In X-ray, we can see that the vertebrae have shifted and pinched that nerve, and now it's like a hose that got stepped on. So they take up a spine and show it to you. Somehow you're going to correlate that with your chakras. And then somebody's going to come in the 60s and tell you, Kundalini has to rise. Kundalini never rises. It's you your consciousness that's rising from level to level to find her there. See? So, the Advaitic way of teaching these truths is beyond what you'll find in conventional religious and spiritual circles. This is the I am, the real I am, not the I am that you're repeating from some person who lived in India as a merchant selling tobacco and now is peddling it to you, see. This is the I am of the avatar, of the realized soul, of the past master who's making sense and bringing light into all these teachings for you. It's the I and my Father are one. Most beautiful statement in Christianity we ever heard as Vedantists. See? Birds have nests, foxes have holes, that's beautiful too, but why did you become attached to animalistic things in the first place? You're not the birds and the beasts. You never were. Evolutionists somehow convinced you that you were a monkey once? In that case, go to the zoo and check out your ancestors. See? You were always the Atman, no matter what appearances were. So get a clue, get some light, and begin your inner sojourn to this most pure and primal place of refuge, where the energy of the 3 subtle rivers meet, Sahasrara, Ida, and Pingala, where they meet and merge. At that confluence, sit and meditate. And you'll find that you'll have a jumping off place from the Anandamaya Kosha into Ananda, Paramananda, the supreme bliss of existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute, Sat Chitananda. And that will be the end to all transmigration for you. You'll put to end all transmigrating cycles, no matter whether they be of the world or of the heavens within you. You'll transcend the gods. Didn't he just say, I am neither God, human being, nor angel inhabiting celestial realms. I am not those things. In fact, all those things are within me, and I'll find them when I take this journey. You think there's somewhere out there, God's floating on a cloud with a beard, or the devil's climbing up out of the earth with a pitchfork, ready to stick you? This is all metaphoric, and it can become superstition. And this superstition can actually get believed in by thousands of first-class fools. So the Vedanta sheds light on all these levels. The Tantra sheds light on all these levels. Yoga, through its 8 limbs, sheds light on all these levels. Samkhya gives you the 24 cosmic principles, sheds light on the entire inner cosmos, inner and outer. Buddhism, Lord Buddha comes 550 years before Christ and sheds light on the nature of suffering and how to transcend it. There is suffering, there's a cause for it. Yeah, I'd say there's probably many causes for it. And I'm not going to be content just to find the outer effect and start working with it. Like, say, I'm sick, here's a pill. You see, I'm going to find that disease back in my head. And I'm going to find my brain is not my mind. And then I'm going to find my mind is not my intellect's not my ego, and my ego is not Atman. So I'll search everything back inside of me till I find the penultimate cause of all things. That's called, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That Word was the first of all things, the first vibration. And nobody can still that vibration. It's constantly putting forth cycles, worlds. And when they're not visible, they go into abeyance. And when they are visible, we have inner and outer cosmos. And 4,320,000,000 year cycles are nothing in deep sleep. See? Seem like a second to you. So instead of getting so wowed about time and space, why don't you get filled with wonder that all time and space have actually come out of you? You're the source of all this. Until you find beyond your ego this Atman that you are, have been, and will always be. No matter how long you might take separation from it, see, and fill the 5 sheaths with it. And dissolve the 5 sheaths back in it like bubbles into water. In and out of it will go. So, from pure food one gets pure blood. From pure blood produces pure thoughts. Pure thoughts lead to pure mind. Pure mind is Brahman. So she might as well be talking about her own version of these 5 koshas. You see, the physical, the vital, the mental, the intellectual, and the ego. And how Shankara came in 700 AD and said, you are none of those. How Hasta Amalaka was waiting for him to come so that he could give you his version of it. And how the father of yoga was waiting for Shankara to come so that he could teach him certain things that he needed to teach in that age. See? And how Gaudapada was waiting for Govindapada, which is the yogic incarnation that was going to be Shankara's teacher, to give you the non-dual karaka that we've studied here in SRV for so long, to prepare Govindapada for Shankara, for Hasta Amalaka, for India, for, all the way here to America. See? So that I could sit here and give you my version of this. I hope it's pure and direct, to the point, and in honor of my teacher, Swami Sheshananda Ji Maharaj, see, who was the last living monastic disciple of Sri Sharda Devi. So, in that way, we have wrapped up these fine slokas of the Taittiriya Upanishad, 4 of them, chapter 2, lesson 1, 2, 3, 4. And we will pick it up then next time with the Vijnanamaya Kosha, if you want the actual page. It's page 111, symbolically. And it deals with the Manamaya Kosha, and then the following lesson deals with the Vijnanamaya Kosha. We'll take those up and look at a few other charts about prana that we'll finish up on, and the wisdom particle, which happens to be in line for explaining the Manomaya Kosha and the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the sheaths of mind and intelligence, mind, thought, and intelligence. That will be a whole level of subtle cause and causal cause that infill prana and body, pranamaya kosha, annamaya kosha, and which also transcend them. Until we find our way, which we've prematurely found already with this Anandagana, this beautiful ocean of bliss. Om Drishyam Pratitam Pravilabhayam San Matram Anandaganam Vibhavayam Samhita San Bahir Antaram Va Kalam Yetaha Sati Karma Bande Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Brahman is an indeterminable mass of pure conscious awareness. Therefore, taking what is external and what is internal, render them all into one indeterminable state, one indivisible state. Then meditate upon that state. Pass your time contentedly. Fill everything with light. And be free. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om Hari Om Hari Om Tat Sat.